As always, a great discussion with Commissioner Gottfried about his vision for the way information needs to be exchanged in the insurance industry, and a really solid understanding of what it takes to develop these networks, these information networks. And it's as much about the technology as it is about the people, and getting people to come together and to build solutions, knowing that this is an iterative process. It takes time to build out networks, to build out new applications, and we're going to learn over time as we do this together. AEIS has been working with the insurance industry to build the Open IDL network. So we've built that as an open source platform, not a proprietary solution, not owned by one vendor, not the centralization of data and under the control of one person, but a decentralized network of data that puts the power of that data back into the hands of the people who generate that data or can deliver value from that data. So in our case, it would be the insurance carriers working with the regulators, creating new data standards for insurance industry data so that it improves in its quality and its value when we choose to use it. We started out with regulatory reporting, but as Commissioner Gottfried also mentioned, it's really the power of connecting that data. The data that we already have, policy and claims data, we have it. We collect it every month, we use it. Let's connect that data with other sources of data and bring new solutions into the market. So OpenIDL is one of many blockchain networks that are going to be in operation over time. MOBI is another network that has been developing over the past couple of years, and it's focused on mobility, transportation, IoT data, and bringing new infrastructure and services, and again, proof of concepts or new applications into the market, working with a large group of companies to try things out, to build this network, to see what's successful, and to move it forward. So we have with us today the co-founder and CEO of MOBI. Tram Vo has been a leader in the area of bringing consortia together, building technology platforms based on blockchain technology and information standards, and then really showing the value by building real applications on top of that. So welcome, Tram. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for having me here. So full disclaimer, I'm not a technologist. So the talk today is not technology based at all. I will try to convey what I understand and hopefully will bring you along. My background is in chemistry, and then I went on to art conservation, consulted for many museums and UNESCO like such around the world. Currently my career focuses on connected mobility and smart city. I change career about every 10 years or so, so I have 5-6 years left before I change career again. But it doesn't matter what industry we're in. Currently, the top two concerns that everybody seems to be discussing are one, data privacy and security, especially your customer PII. And two is interoperability. How do you communicate? How do you transfer data, and how do you transact with each other without having to build new infrastructure? Or worse, build it and then have to update it every 2 years. So a little history about MOBI and what we are doing to help solve the data privacy and interoperability issues. Back in 2016 and 17, many of our now MOBI members were very excited about blockchain, and they all experimented with proof of concepts. And what they found out that putting a vehicle on chain, putting an identity on chain, putting service, all that was easy. It was not the technology. What they found out was that their application couldn't scale. It didn't go anywhere. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One, the industry needs standards. Standards on how to identify people, things, vehicle, a trip. How does a trip begins? How does it end? And how do you share data and settle transaction? Two, they were using advanced Web3 technology, but it was still building centralized platforms. So it's really hard for us to go beyond what we know. And what do I mean by that? Daimler Mercedes built a mass multimodal platform, couldn't convince BMW and Volkswagen to go onto it. BMW spent a lot of money building a supply chain platform, couldn't convince all the OEMs to go onto it. DHL, when I talked with them a couple years ago, they spent $54 million building a logistic platform, couldn't convince FedEx or UPS to go onto it. And so there were many, many examples, and I'm pretty sure similar in other industries. And this is why MOBI launched in 2018. Along with our members, we are creating standards, and we are building the Web3 infrastructure for connected ecosystems and IoT commerce. There we go. Although the word blockchain is in our name, we think of it just as one tool among many in our toolbox. So the convergence of all the technology that you see here will come together and will give any connected entity a trusted identity and enable them to be able to securely communicate and transact with each other without having to go through a centralized platform like Google or Facebook, for example. And why do we need a trusted identity? Currently, 60 to 65% of internet traffic is made up of bots. I was surprised when I learned that percentage. And 40% of all internet traffic is made of malicious bots. So, and there are 15 billion connected things right now on the internet. That number is projected to double every 3 years. So then how do you do business, or how do you even insure something if you don't even know what you have in front of you? And this is why we are working on the trusted identity. MOBI and our members are working with AIS and our members to come up with a trusted identity for our ecosystem, our joint ecosystem, because on the internet we will all have to communicate and transact with each other. And we call that the self-sovereign digital twins, or SSDT. And what are they exactly? They are universal translators, so we can speak different languages and all understand each other. They are encrypted log data vaults that only the owner or the controller has access to it. Think of it as your personal safe at home, except this is a digital safe that you can store your credentials like your driver license, your passport, your birth certificate, and that you have access and control to that. And it lives on your server or your cell phone, for example. And to make them interoperable and data security, we use W3C standards. The two standards we are using is the decentralized identifiers, the DID standard, and the VC verifiable credential standard. You'll hear me talk about them again. Those were generated by the W3C, which stands for the World Wide Web Consortium, and they produce standards that we use for the internet. So what is MOBI's Web3 infrastructure? You hear the word Web3 all the time. What exactly is it? It's essentially a new iteration of the internet where you get to combine concepts such as decentralization, blockchain, self-sovereign identity. Web 1 was read-only. We remember Web 1, I think. Most of us here should remember Web 1, where you just read only. And then Web 2 is when you actually can read and write, so you can produce content and interact with each other in social network. And then Web 3, which is what we're trying to build, is essentially you can read, you can write, and you can own your own identity and be able to monetize the data that you produce on the internet, and you have control over it. And MOBI is building the Web3 infrastructure with our members, including AIS. You can see on the left here that 3 layers. The bottom layer is the blockchain protocols. We are technology agnostic, so we don't prescribe to any single blockchain. That's not our job. 10 years from now, you don't know which blockchain is still going to be around. So instead, what we're doing is we're building the layer 2. We call it the Integrated Trust Network, the ITN. Think of it as the bridge that connects all the different blockchains and make them interoperable. And the top layer is the marketplace, the federated marketplace, where all the applications reside, all the transactions reside, and all your killer apps can reside on top of there. I call this infrastructure separation for decentralization. And what that means is none of those entities has all the information that can put the pieces of the puzzle together to make me who I am. or an organization. So that way you ensure data privacy and data security for all involved, the user and the provider. Nobody has all the pieces of the puzzle. In the interest of time, I won't walk through how it works, but if you want to talk with me about it, I'm really excited and I can talk to you to my understanding of how the whole thing works. The important thing to remember is that blockchain is only being used as the DID registry, and that's it. And the DID registry identifiers, think of identifiers like your email address or your phone number, ways that people can get in touch with you. So think of the ITN as a phone book, a yellow page where you can broadcast your phone number, how people can get in touch with you, what services you have to offer. It's been a while since any of us have seen a yellow page, I think, because Google now has become the de facto yellow page for everybody, right? Every day you use Google to find all the services that you want. So we are redoing the internet a little bit by creating a yellow page called the ITN. So that's the public communication channel. The moment you find a phone number and the service that you want to do business with, you pick up the phone to call somebody. That moment you leave the public communication channel and you go into the private communication channel, and that's Zootopia. There we go. So this is a really high-level architecture of what we're trying to build. Our members, including AAIS, are running nodes in the ITN, and that is for the DIDS registry. Next year, we hope to also have Zootopia available for members to come and run nodes on that as well. That is not blockchain nodes, that is more like computer nodes, so that you can decentralize all the services that we're offering, and you can tell the self-sovereign digital twins live on everybody's server or your cell phone. I foresee it as an app that you can download onto your cell phone and you can control it from there. So we are working on, we're running many pilots. I won't go into them. You can go onto our website and read up on them if you're interested, including usage-based insurance. We have that working group, and State Farm is about to start it up again. So happy to talk with you about that. The one use case that I would like to focus on is we call it the dealer floor plan audit. It's for dealership. When you go to the dealership and you buy a car, how does the bank make sure that the dealership still has the cars on the lot? If they sold, they want their money back immediately. And so if you don't pay them back, then they can't use that money for something else. So the dealer floor plan audit, we think, is the gateway drug to the new economy of movement. And why is that? And what are we demonstrating that is profoundly foundational to what we're trying to do? So a little bit of a history, back up a little bit a few years ago. It took us a few years to get to where we are. The first standard that we produced was called MOBI VID, MOBI Vehicle Identity. That was back in 2019. What it did, it was combine the VIN standard and W3C DID standard together to make a identity that's machine readable, tamper evident, for a trusted vehicle identity. Then a couple years later, fast forward to 2021, we produced another standard we call the MOBI Trusted Trip. And that MOBI Trusted Trip standard uses W3C verifiable credential standard. And what we did was we linked the trusted identity with the trusted timestamp location, UBID. So now you have trusted identity, trusted location. But we all know location is PII. So how do you hide that? And to do that, we are implementing a lot of zero-knowledge proof on Zootopia. Each application requires a different zero-knowledge proof. ZKP, what ZKP means is that I can prove to you that I know something without having to reveal the information to you. So this particular application, ZKP, allowed us to ping the vehicle and say, are you in this geofence location? And the geofence location is the dealership. And then all the vehicle answer back is yes or no, and that's it. If it's not in the dealership, it could be on a ride with a customer, it doesn't need to tell you where it is. All the answer is yes, I'm in the dealership, no, I'm not. And what if you ping it every hour for 24 hours straight, or 3 days straight, and if it consistently come back and say, nope, I'm not, then you have a problem. Then you need to go and investigate. Right now, that process is really manual. the lenders have to send an individual person with a clipboard and go and look at every vehicle and try to find a VIN number and check it off. Can you imagine how difficult and how intensively expensive that process is? And if you can make it digitized using blockchain, there's a trust component in there. All these 4 things that I just talked about, the trusted identity, trusted location, zero knowledge proof, and interoperability. And interoperability because we are using the World Wide Web Consortium standards. So we are using the internet to communicate with each other. That infrastructure is built already. We don't have to build it anymore. And we can start doing business in this new way, in this Web3 way, without having to spend a lot of money. You have to spend time and investment and learning and knowledge. But after that, as the commissioner was saying, that the companies that get in first will be ahead of the game. And I would love for you to come and join us at MOBI to work on this together with us.
Well, thank you, Tram. That's a great overview of everything you've been working on, and it's a lot. And you've been working with a large group of companies that are bringing their expertise to the table. Now, you mentioned the identifiers, such as vehicle identifiers, and all of us in the insurance industry, we know VIN numbers. We use them all the time, and we use them to create data reports. And we send our data into centralized locations. Why can't we just use those, identifiers that have been serving us well to move into this new digital environment?
A couple things. So one, those identifiers are attached to PIIs. And so if you send that around, that's not a good thing. And 2, centralized database get hacked. Every week you hear at least one Fortune 500 company's been hacked. And then they lose millions and millions of dollars trying to cover that, trying to fix that. So those are the biggest reason, I think, why we need to do this. And identifiers, again, you do it in a way that you're not linking any PII on it whatsoever. It's just your phone number or your email address. And the beauty about self-sovereign digital twin, what we're trying to do, so these are essentially contracts, right? Think of what we have today, DocuSign. When you send a contract to somebody, both you and I have to sign it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to produce. It's still the same way we're doing business, except a little bit different. So your self-sovereign digital twin will generate an identifier for that one specific contract only between Joan and I. And then later on, somebody can verify it by looking at her digital signature that did and my digital signature that my self-sovereign digital twin generated, and compare that to verify that we did enter into this contract. And the beauty is that you don't use the same DID more than once, only once, and that's enough. In DocuSign, you use the same signature over and over and over and over again for hundreds, if not thousands of documents, depends on what you do for work. So this way, it prevents also data privacy and being able to create a fake identity as well.
Exactly. Yes, and that's at the heart of the North Dakota Uninsured Motorist Project as well, is how do you keep information private but exchange good information in between. So the blockchain network enables the carriers to keep their data secure and private in their own data store. It's distributed, it's in their data center, and then provide those yes/no answers. Yes. Very often is this vehicle identifier insured, and we're able to store the data securely but exchange information so we can say yes, it's insured, or no, it's not. And also, I think in the MOBI network, the number of items that you will have identifiers for is just huge when you think about the mobile, the transportation networks that are developing, Internet of Things. This far exceeds anything that we've had to deal with in the insurance industry in terms of we insure a lot of things, but we don't have to have unique identifiers for them. So certainly MOBI with its unique digital identifiers and a network that helps you find things and get information about those things will be of huge benefit to the insurance industry. So we've both been going along our own paths, but we've come to the same conclusions. We've built systems that operate similar using blockchain technology because it meets a need. Yes. And it will eventually help us work together. So you talked a little bit about the risks of centralized data, and Commissioner Gottfried talked about that as well, where we have issues with the databases being hacked. But it's more than just the databases being hacked. When you have centralized data, there's an overhead, there's a time lag, there's lots that goes along with centralized data that doesn't serve us in this new connected world where we need to exchange information fairly quickly. So can you talk a little bit about how MOBI is helping us get away from those centralized databases and really supporting commerce in a new way?
Centralized database is costly, as you mentioned, and it's also locked into it inhere innovation, in our opinion. For example, vehicles has been having telematics now for decades. You all know OnStar, right? OnStar was developed back in the mid-90s. And it's now pretty much, when I talk with OEMs, about 90% of new vehicles, if not more, have built-in telematics. None of them are able to use that data because they're so afraid of what happened if they actually send that data around. They don't even share it with other business units within their company. GM, OnStar, all that data is still sitting somewhere with a lot of data not being used. And if you can use that data, that would be incredible, and it opens up new businesses, new business models. And centralized platform, cities, I've talked with a lot of cities as well, and they collect a lot of data, and they get convinced by their vendors to collect data, to be able to build application, and that all sounds really exciting. However, what they learn is that once they collect the data, just like most businesses, what happened is they can't afford the hundreds of data scientists that Uber's hire, for example. So then all that data just sit in the data silo. I call them cylinder of excellence. And they just sit in the cylinder of excellence, and they don't get used, they don't get anything. So what is the point of collecting data if you can't use it? What happens if you look at it in a different way, build a business model where you only get the data real time. You use it during that time, you don't store it, and once you're done with it, you have a contract, you have payment, poof, that data doesn't have to be there anymore. Nobody store it. The owner of that data gets control of it, release it when they need to, sell it when they need to, you sell insurance when you need to, and then you can always trace back if you can, if you want to, using blockchain and using the identifiers, but you don't have to store that data. And you can do business on the dime like that.
Yep. Certainly relieves a lot of the burden of data collection, PII, data security that the insurance industry has been working with for quite some time, building up large data warehouses and trying to deal with the security issues. This solves a lot of problems and removes that financial burden, as well as, just workload on the insurance industry, as well as we move to these new platforms. Now, looking at your website, you can see that you have a lot of members in the transportation industry, IoT vendors, but you have insurance companies that are joining MOBI as well, like State Farm. So why would a company like State Farm or Swiss Re be interested in joining MOBI?
All those companies are very interested in usage-based insurance. Right now, a survey has shown that most of the customer, that's what they want. Most of the time, their cars, the vehicle is the second most expensive things you purchase after your house. And it sits still in your garage 96% of the time. And most people don't want to have to pay insurance if they're not using their vehicle. So insurance companies have learned that now. That's what the customer want, and they really want to be able to do usage-based insurance, and not just for the car, the standardized vehicle that we see it. There's scooters now. There's bikes. There's a lot of things on the road that you can insure that right now you have no access to be able to insure that. What if a car goes over a pothole and be able to report that? You can insure the city for being able to fix that pothole sooner than later. So there's many new business model, I think, and I'm not an insurance person at all, that can open up using this kind of technology, this kind of reporting, real-time reporting, instead of, as the commissioner was saying, that could be months old, years old, and by then that data is not valid anymore.
And certainly with State Farm and USAA, they had an early blockchain project to look at subrogation.
Yes, they
and they brought it to the insurance industry, and just like the auto industry and other industries, they couldn't get a community together to invest in a proprietary solution. So when we think about networks and solving these problems, it really is going to be founded on open source, open networks, not proprietary, not locking anyone into a single solution, but building these networks and then connecting them together. So if I were to think about State Farm's business model and usage-based insurance, they've learned kind of the hard way is that we need to get involved with MOBI. We need to tap into all the resources that will be in MOBI, in Satopia, all that data. Let's leverage that and tie it back into the insurance market. Let's look at how usage-based insurance will link the policy and claims data that we have with the information that's available on MOBI. So I could see how it's kind of a relief to State Farm and others to say, oh, somebody's going to help us build this, and then we just tap into it. So I'm sure they're very excited to be there.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope all our members get the value that they think they should and get the value out of being a member of MOBI. And so think of it, we're building essentially a network of roads and highways. And then on that, you can use that to directly communicate with somebody and be able to exchange credentials and be able to do business. And that's why think of us not building any databases, we're just building the infrastructure for you to communicate in a way that preserves data privacy for the user and the provider, and interoperability by using the internet.
And as you mentioned earlier, these types of solutions take years to develop.
Yes.
And this wonderful, perfect application never comes out of the earliest work. And Commissioner Gottfried mentioned this as well. You have to get in, you have to work with it, you have to build your knowledge and contribute to the solution to really get the solutions that work for your business. So you mentioned there is a working group now in MOBI that State Farm is going to lead to look at connecting MOBI data with insurance data for usage-based insurance. So how can professionals get involved? Do they contact, do they go to your website, or how would they get involved in the MOBI work groups?
Very easy. You can go to the MOBI website, and on the top right, there's a join button. You can press on it and fill out the information. Individual cannot join MOBI, and I think individual cannot join AAIS either, correct? Or,
no, we only have corporate membership.
Yes, so the same thing for MOBI. You have to be a organization. So then fill out that form, and you will get an email, and we'll set up a call and walk through the benefits of what MOBI membership is. And we hope you come and join that working group. It's been in a little bit of hiatus for a little while, but we want to start it up again and be able to come up with some application that we can be able to work out the data schema and how to exchange data, for example.
And that's a really good point. The same process exists within OpenIDL. Where did we start? We started with data standards. You have to understand the data that's going to be exchanged in order to exchange good information. So within OpenIDL, we have a working group on standards for policy and claims data. And that is at the heart of what we're doing with Commissioner Godfrey's project. We also have an architectural working group where anyone can become involved, and we have carriers that are involved today that are designing the way the OpenIDL nodes need to connect to the network in a way that works for their corporate data centers, and it also works for OpenIDL. So within the MOBI community, I'm sure there's similar opportunities to get involved with the technology for technology professionals that are working in the insurance industry, because the real point here is that you can't wait until the system is built to really take advantage of it or to make sure that it works for your business. Involving your company today is really to ensure that you're up to speed, you know how to leverage this new technology, and it was molded in a way that fits your business.
Yes.
So MOBI pulls it all together with Satopia. As you can see, there's a lot of property to insure on this new network of transportation network, more than we've experienced in the past, new ways of thinking about providing insurance. And AIS has been very impressed with what MOBI has been building for quite some time and understand that they're the experts in this field. We're not. But we do need to work closely with them to offer new products to the insurance market, and we need to come along with them. So we currently have someone that is working on bridging an OpenIDL node with an MOBI ITN node so that we can learn how this information can be exchanged, and we can learn about how to tie in a lot of these digital identifiers and other information that's available to what we already are building with the OpenIDL. So again, to just kind of bring it back around, is that it takes a community. It's going to take multiple communities coming together and learning about one another and how to leverage the blockchain networks that we're building. And then as Commissioner Godfrey mentioned, that's kind of where the magic happens, where we finally are able to exchange information in new ways while keeping our core data private and secure. So we really appreciate all the work that MOBI is doing to help us do that. So Tram, thanks so much for joining us today. Very insightful presentation.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.